Welcome back to Crispy's Projects, and in this episode we're going to be messing around with this Mk2 Golf. So it's been dropped off by a friend of mine because he's got two major issues. One of it is the oil pressure warning light keeps coming on, and the other one, it will not start when it's cold. So considering it's about 7-8 degrees today, we're definitely going to have a cold start issue. So I'm going to run through a lot of the basics of testing the injection system. Now this is K-Jet, which is a mechanical fuel injection, which is far superior to anything else. I think the only reason they got rid of it is because they couldn't control it for emissions. Let's run through the diagnosis process, and I'll actually stop when I've actually found out what's up with it and we fix it. Once it runs and it's hot, it starts up mint, drives quite well. So there could be a few reasons why it doesn't actually start up, so we're going to run through all the start issues first of all, see if we can get it running, and then try and work out what's going on with the oil pressure. Now it's been a while since I've worked on a KR, and to be honest, it's a little bit different from a Mark 1, so let's have a little look at what we've got here. So there's the VW one that has got one of the low pressure ones in, and if we go over to the side, we've got all the various temp senders all located all down there. So part of the cold start issue could be some of these temp senders that are on the side of the head, because they all go back to the injection system. It's a little bit more advanced than the Mark 1 one. So hopefully the system doesn't actually realise that it's really cold and it's given some false readings and it's trying to do a hot start rather than a cold start. So I'll do all that before I start diving too deep in. Just the green on the connector. So I'm going to take a lot of those sensors off and just give them a good clean. And I think what I'm going to do is take that off and give that a good clean, because I've pulled that up and it looks reasonable. It's not mint. You can see a lot of dirt's come out, and if you actually look inside you can just see where the contacts are. That's fairly clean copper now opposed to what it was. So some of it could have been built up and caused a resistance change. Only one way to find out. Let's put them all back together. Another point of starting issues I'm going to tackle is going to be the earth cable. The earth cable is always missed. So what I'm going to do is go and take off the earth cable completely, make sure that terminal is very clean that goes to the body, and then also the terminal at the back that's mounted to the block. So I pulled this one out and it actually looks quite clean. You see where the actual contact patch is. So I'll give it a good clean anyway. So I managed to clean this up. All the contact surfaces are all in really good condition. And I've also cleaned all these up as well. So let's put it back together. And those nuts have also had the same treatment. So let's see if she starts up any better. Not really. The first test I'm going to do is make sure voltage is going to the fifth injector, which is situated down here on the inlet manifold. And that's dead simple. I've got a multimeter plugged in. So we can see there's voltage there. So next up is actually see if there's any fuel coming out of the fifth injector. Okay, I'd say that's actually working. Cool. So visually just look around there. And I've just had a real quick look and I can see a vacuum line which isn't connected. So I'll take all this off and double check everything that's in there, and also make sure that the flow meter looks like it's moving up and down. So I found two things wrong, which probably not caused any of the issues. So that's just a little bit squashed. I'll straighten that out. But also that vacuum line is the second one that just goes underneath the elbow that's on there. So I'll reconnect that. That's probably not causing the starting issues. Now there's a little plus sign on there, so I'm going to put negative to that side. You can see a circuit and it works, and if I blow down it, it opens and closes. So I managed to hit across something, and I've actually took this off to clean it. So it starts up without that there, so that's a good sign that the thing that's controlling that isn't working, because that little ISV is working. After looking through the Haynes manual and looking online, I finally found where the stabilisation valve control module is, which is here in my hand. And the important bit of information I didn't give you at the beginning of this is that I know some of the history of the vehicle. Now this has had a heater matrix explode and leak all its coolant, and guess where this is kept? Underneath the centre console. And most of the contacts are all in really good condition, so it might have not got that wet, but there was one definite blackened one up there. So what I'm going to do is clean that off. All the others look clean apart from just a little smidgen on that one, which that one is the power feed coming in. I've clearly not owned enough Mk2s to remember, so I've got it disconnected and we're going to run through the wires with a multimeter. So we're going to start off on the voltage setting. So we'll start off with the brown and white. The brown and the white is the earth that's on the back of the block. So I'm going to put my earth wire in there. And the solid black one, that should be battery voltage when the ignition is on. The red and black one next to it should be 12 volts, also when the ignition is on, but it changes slightly when it cranks, because that is the one that goes to the ignition coil. .12 volts. So the brown and black that's just below it should be the overrun cut-off valve. I can't even remember what that is, which is showing battery voltage again on that one, because it goes through a solenoid valve. So without explaining too much about electrics, you're basically going to get 12 volts off there, because it's going to be earthed to control the other solenoid, which is through this control module. So the easy way to measure the resistance on the valve would be between these two. So it's the black and white and the white wire as well, and I'm getting 4.8 ohms, pretty much on spec, because that's also a little solenoid valve. So the other interesting one, which I thought may have been the problem, would have been that there's a little switch that's on the throttle bodies that's basically whether it's down to where the accelerator pedal is. So it should spring back and just click a switch to say there's no driver wish, which is basically someone stamping on the accelerator. So that is the black and yellow. So if you're not pushing the accelerator, it's battery voltage. Push the accelerator a little bit, goes down to 0 volts. The green solid wire apparently just goes to the back of the fuse box. Doesn't actually get connected to a UK model. This is only if it's got air conditioning fitted. So if you've retrofitted air conditioning, good choice. And I believe that should be connected to something, which, to be honest, I don't know what. And first things to test, because this is the most likely point of fail, is the little temperature sensor that's in the coolant, which is on the side of the head. We're able to test it on the resistance meter, which you can do the same thing by going direct to the sensor and make sure you haven't got any resistance lost through the circuit, by going to the brown and white wire and then going to the green and red wire. The green and red wire on my one now is 1.4 million, which is rather high. So I'm going to have to get myself one of those little temp senders. So with that plugged in, it now starts. Now That sounds like a Mk2 16 valve. Sweet. Now what I've noticed when we put the ignition on, that either goes all the way high up, which means it's an open circuit, or it sits at 1 bar. So let's go and wiggle the wires and try it again. So there's the video. If we just look there on the wiring, that looks alright. It's not amazing, it's starting to wear out, but it's not broken. It seems solid. You can see that this is the wire that feeds the gauge. There's a little bit of corrosion in there, and I've found that some of these cheaper ones aren't always great. It looks clean, but for the sake of just trimming it a little bit, putting a new end on, it's good clean wire in there. Yeah, good new clean connector. I've also taken just that little bit off. It does look in fairly good condition, but just to put a new connector on there. So I've managed to source some new components for this. So the main one being the VDO style gauge. Got to say style gauge because it's not the VDO unit. Bang on zero. I'm very happy with that. The VDO unit is big money, and the proper variation for this has a 0.25 low oil pressure sender that's in there, which is probably why it's big money. And realistically, it's not needed, because if you've got it in the oil filter housing and you're below 0.5 bar, pretty much at the oil filter, the damage is done with the rest of the engine. When you consider later Mark III's had something like a 0.9 at the high pressure, and then a 0.25, I always want to call it a 0.3, a 0.25 normally on the back of the head, which makes perfect sense to me. I have seen vehicles where it's been good pressure there, it's lost it either on the crank bearings or something like that, and the rest of the engine's just been knackered. So this is my preferred way of doing it, and this is what I do. So if this video has actually helped you out, or you found it at all interesting, give it a thumbs up. Go and check out some of the other videos on the channel. I'm in the middle of doing a Corrado project where I'm putting a 130 PD in a Corrado chassis, but don't worry, I'm trying to keep it as much pure Corrado as possible. And that's hopefully going to be back on the road soon, so we'll be able to see if the air conditioning and the ABS system is now working. So I'm going to go and take this out for a road test, and I'll see you in the next one. Ta-da! No sooner as I finished filming the last episode on getting this up and running and cold starting, I noticed it's got a water leak, so I've quickly jacked it up. There just seems to be a pool of water underneath. So let's go and have a look how much water there actually.